Hi there, and welcome to the podcast Life as a show intently focused on exploring and unearthing the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Shaun. Any idea what it takes to build an ultra-successful company? I mean one that is generating extraordinarily high year-on-year sales. Or what do you know about infusing and maintaining superhuman-like levels of motivation and morale amongst employees? Oh, and what do you think it would take to capture North American, industry-wide esteem and awards year in and year out? Stumped? No worries. Very few business owners are able to hit on any, let alone all three of the aforementioned milestones. Luckily for you, I have one of those unicorns in for a chat today to unpack it all. Shaun Lichtenberger is the co-founder and president of Blvd, a Niagara region, Canadian-based branded merchandise agency. Since its founding in 2007, success has followed not only the firm, but also the governor, or boss, as Shaun is affectionately known by his employees. With his business partner, Chris Sinclair, the two have built a wildly successful business in a notoriously fierce industry. For perspective, Blvd routinely reaches and exceeds annual sales milestones of $15 million a year. Not only that, the cache of prestigious industry awards Blvd has garnered from across North America continues to grow and impress. Try these on. Awarded as one of the greatest companies to work for. Awarded, multiple times I might add, as Distributor of the Year. Awarded, fastest growing Canadian companies. Awarded, #1 best place to work. These accomplishments have all been spearheaded by Shaun and his partner, Chris Sinclair. However, I must add that for many, the true measure of success ought to come from one's competitors and industry peers. Shaun, unsurprisingly, has that aspect covered too. Here are a couple of quotes I dug up on him and his company. I met Shaun and Chris 7 years ago, and I'd heard so many positive things about them. I thought they'd be really easy to hate, but within a minute of talking to them, I knew that would be impossible. Here's another. Good things happen to good people. Outstanding things happen to outstanding people. Shaun and Chris are outstanding people. On that note, Shaun, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Wow, thanks for having me. And thanks for the intro. I could use that about once a week or so. So just to lift up my
just put that on repeat. Yeah. It could be part of your morning affirmation, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel good about myself.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's just jump right into this, Shaun. The first segment here is something called Coloring Wikipedia. Basically, as some of my listeners might know, this is a segment in which we try to add some zest, otherwise dry explanations of particular professions. And plus, I find it helps guests, maybe like yourself, identify what aspects of the job that are missing. So in your role as president, I mean, most people have a general idea of what the basics are, what's entailed in that position. But as a refresher for some, I'm going to read off this very simple description of the job. After listening, and perhaps you could kind of give that added insight, maybe some of the lesser known details. So here goes. President. Responsible for establishing a company's goals and strategies and presiding over the entire workforce, overseeing budgets and ensuring resources are properly allocated, ensures departments meet individual goals. All right, there you go, Shaun. What do you think?
Pretty accurate. Never really looked at that before, but absolutely, yeah, accurate. I think some other aspects of what I do, and I get a lot of fulfillment out of is I mean, we've been in business now, this will be our 15th year. So we have our first retirement coming up. We have employees that you just grew up with, essentially. So spending a lot of time individually with them, regardless of their position. So outside of doing what you just explained there, I try my best to incorporate with all employees we have. I mean, it gets a little more challenging with some of the bodies we've been adding at a pretty rapid rate, but it's a part of the job that I really like in a one-on-one coaching format. Lots going on in the world, and if I can lend a hand, whether that's personally or professionally, I get a lot of fulfillment out of just that one-on-one time with a lot of our employees, regardless of position.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I mean, again, these definitions are oftentimes quite dry, and they're just oftentimes just factual, and they miss
Yeah.
the idiosyncrasies. They miss the personal relationships within the job. And of course, in a role that, where you're at right now, there is a lot of that mentoring and kind of guiding people along and trying to, of course, help them along in terms of finding success, because that's of course going to be, a benefit to your company, but then also the relationship that you have with that person as just, on a humanistic level, you want to see people succeed. So
Yeah, we have a leadership team, Chris and I, that really does most of the day to day here, and we've really a lot of those individuals really grew up with the company. I mean, you look at our operations manager now; she started at reception. Um, our creative director, Chris and I have known for so many years. Angela, who heads up our branding and marketing, has started at reception and really grew. So the mentoring has been ongoing for a long time, but now in this next phase of the organization, they're really running a lot of it as far as the day to day goes. So we spent tons of time. My role, I spent tons of time with that group. That group of 4 or 5 individuals. I'm with them regularly, meeting with them weekly. So sometimes I feel almost isolated with that crew. So I try my best, and I spend a lot of time with the group as we continue to grow to 40 plus bodies where we're at right now. So it's
right.
just, yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell right now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, it must be quite rewarding to see that type of growth, personal growth within your staff, and seeing people just progress to that point where now they've embodied probably a lot of the values that you and Chris have, set forth on making, valuable parts of your company, and now they're being, promoted by those within. So
Yeah, that is extremely rewarding. I think as you look at, maybe 20 years now I've been in this industry. So I mean, it goes by fast, and it's like I don't know, with the last 2 to 3 years feel like 10 years almost,
mm,
and you feel like you feel it more than you used to. But the reflection part of it is something I'm really attaching to the best I possibly can, and enjoying that, and then seeing that in them as they continue to grow and make decisions, and seeing how the company evolves. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of my job, probably more and more every single day.
excellent. All right. Well, I'd like to move on into a new segment here, something called a Q&A discovery. I'm just going to fire off some questions for you and see what you got. So the first one here is, I kind of like to start with a visit to the past. I mean, if you can recall, what was your vision for Brand Boulevard when it was founded?
Well, I think 20 years ago. Well, no, it was 2007. So I think the funniest thing I can think about there, not even funny, just the reality, was just fear of failure. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, Chris and I had confidence. We knew what we were very confident. We were young and, full of piss and vinegar and ready to go. But we were confident, but we were also fearful of, just like, we put everything on the line, right? So
of course.
these were, I don't know if you remember in like the college university days when you're walking down the hallway and they'll like give you a free pack of highlighters, but if you sign up for a credit card, but you don't know that it's at like 23% or something. So like, I mean, getting his money all we could. And we were maxing out when we first opened the business, we didn't have the money, right? So we have that story where we're maxing out credit cards and paying suppliers and figuring things out to kind of go forward.
Right.
So I think how the vision takes shape and grows over the course of the years is a fun discussion. I think a quote I always go back to that I really like is, "You build the plane as you fly it."
Mm.
And I know it can sound scary because you're relating that to a plane, right? But I mean, I've really honed in on that one over the last so many years, as far as seeing how you can grow a company, knowing that the vision is and the business plan are constantly a living and breathing things.
Right.
You have to, with so much things you can't control, you have to be accountable to them, but you have to be willing to change and adapt
Yeah.
based on your surroundings and still push forward. So I find that where we've grown from when we started, which was a lot of like, we just can't fail, we just have to do this, to that mindset shifts and grows as the company grows. And then you start to get more strategic kind of along the way. At the beginning, we were selling and just trying to get to the
Right.
next thing, right? So I mean, you get more strategic and with time and experience. And so that's kind of how I could explain those two things the best.
No, I think that's well said. I mean, it sounds as though, at least my understanding is that, yeah, those early years, probably for a lot of companies, it's just like you said, sales, 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 don't die, don't
Mhm.
die, don't die.
Yeah,
But
it
as you
really
progress,
is.
and if you're able, lucky enough to get through the stages, then you start, getting to the point where you're at now, it sounds like, where you're starting to build the culture and finding ways for the company itself to run on its own without your fingers in every little aspect of it. And yeah, I could see how that would be an exciting challenge to be part
Yeah,
of now.
absolutely.
And keeping it fresh, keeping it interesting. All right. Well, I've got another question here for you. I've read once that most of your staff are millennials. Now, much has been written of that in terms of, some of the negativity surrounding that. But I'd kind of like to take a different tact here. And maybe you could speak of some of the positive points or benefits of having such a young staff. I mean, clearly they're driving a lot of your success right now. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I'm definitely a topic. I totally, good question. I totally see where you're coming from with that group. And it's kind of funny in that it's, in a weird way, almost all we know. Like, I mean, we just missed it by a few years, I think. So what I can touch on for sure, certain things we do here, and I do see that there is difference, but I also in the same breath, I try not to generalize it. But you look at our company, I mean, make no mistake about it, millennials run this place, for sure they do. And a lot of great there. I think some of the basic things you hear, and on the positive side of it, I can definitely attest to, like, vulnerability is important there. I think that they're more of here, not to generalize, but here I am. This is, and I really love and appreciate that kind of tone that happens there. It allows you to get to where you need to get to faster in some degrees, but it's also allowed us to kind of move with it, right? Flexibility is extremely important. I think some things there that when you can cut to the core of things quicker, I think it gives you more options to grow. And I think that's really, when we look at our company there, we see a lot of that. I mean, technology, how fast youth is getting in technology, and how much you can, that helps with your innovation. So I think those two marry each other very well. And we are a company of millennials. I know for us as a company, constant feedback and communication are really vital. So we have, and I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day, and Nick Petrello's really stood out as far as talking about mental health aspect. And I, we can attest to that here at the office, is providing a lot of support for our crew. So we have a counselor that comes in on a monthly basis. So he comes into our office and works with anyone that wants to talk about anything. It doesn't have to just be, when we first started out, it was business related, really. Now it's gone to life. And then we also have added support that we offer as far as is kind of working with that work-life balance, about flexibility, providing that to our staff, and we continue to grow is that kind of, as we evolve as a company there too. So, I mean, I see a lot of that. I also, transparency is probably the most important word there. I think we continue to test that, and with ourselves as a leadership team, is reminding ourselves to be fully transparent all the time. And we push, what I mean by test is we push those limits. Like we want every single person in our organization to know exactly why we're doing something. And we've learned that lesson. A lot of where you go in business, I find, is you fail and you get up and you maneuver and you figure it out. I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of with this team, is we get there quicker by doing that. And we continue to say, okay, how do we move here based on what our surroundings are? And transparency has always been a key for us there. Here's what we're trying to accomplish and why. So we always talk about why, and we remind our team why. Explain to them exactly why we're doing this. We can keep our whole company aligned, and that brings us all together, for sure.
That's really interesting, and it's really well said too. I mean, I think there's a lot of lessons in there for anyone who's interested in business, or maybe who has their own business right now. But it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Brand Blvd and what you guys are doing are embracing a lot of the qualities that come naturally to, say, millennials. What you're just speaking about, the communicative aspects, the transparency, being able to really leverage all of those points, so you're able to pivot and move quickly as a company to capitalize on, opportunities within the market.
1,000%. And I think doing that while also walking that tightrope of accountability and making sure we have something we have to accomplish. And I think that's where the why comes into play. This is why we did what we did. This is why we need these metrics. This is why, by going in that direction, reminding that we have to still have, you can't go one way or the other. And I find the world we live in now, people go to extremes really fast. You see it everywhere, right? Where there's a big old middle ground there, and you kind of got to walk that tightrope, and you can apply that to everything. But you see that a lot in today's world, right? Pandemic my kids, moving to the woods, or all of these things happen, right? But it's like, you kind of got to test it. I think a lot of people to kind of stay firm to what you are and you believe in, but at the same time, you have to navigate to what's around you. And we've really found that that transparency has been the key word there, as far as letting the team know why we need to hit these metrics and why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really, really great insight, Shaun. Thanks so much for that. I want to shift over to another question here. And we've been speaking a lot about the company and staff and so on and so forth. But I want to dive in a little bit more about you and your side of things. Like, what has it been like, or what is it like of running this ultra successful company? What's the balance like? Managing yourself, family, maintaining relations, so on and so forth. That can be a big challenge for a lot of people. And I'd be curious to hear, what do you do to
Yeah,
to
that's
handle that?
it's a constant thing.
Yeah.
I think, I don't do a lot of I mean, I've done a few podcasts in the past or a few interviews, but I don't do what I like about this and how you framed a lot of these questions, that it really allowed me to think further and reminisce almost, right?
Mm,
So I even that story we were talking about earlier, but when you start out and you fear drives you, and then you kind of evolve and grow, and the last probably 3-4 years, I would say my role has shifted a lot, because Chris and I've always had a growth mindset. It's what we enjoy, right? And the more we go back to it and get to where we want to continue to grow and evolve, and watch what people do and how they evolve within. So where we are, our roles have to evolve as well. If we stop evolving and changing what we do, then it just kind of creates that bottleneck, right? So how that relates to my personal life is I try to find the balance, that's for sure, all the time, and I think a
yeah.
lot of us in the world can attest to that. I think the I on certain things I definitely hyper focus on, and that's been very good to me, but it also can put me down that line of having my own mental health struggles, where I'm so into something and I can't
I
let
hear
those
you.
thoughts go.
Yeah.
So I've had to do detaching is very important, right? And my new job allows for that in a lot of ways. Like you have to get out of the way of a lot of your young leaders too, and allow
Mm,
them to lead. If I'm getting my hands in too much, and I've always had this good old fashioned, I don't know, I call it like a shop, like a minding the shop kind of mentality, where it's like the old, the business adage of it's my store. I sweep in the morning when I wake up, and I'm the last one to lock the door. And I
right.
found over the years I have a lot of that mentality in me. Like
Okay.
I would be like, no matter how big we're getting, I still need to be the guy that locks the door at the end of the day, and really, really mind shifting towards you don't need to do any of that stuff, or even more importantly, you don't need to think like that. So my roles evolved a lot that way. So that allows me to kind of put, some more time where in my life, and focus more on my family, my young kids and my wife, and where I want to kind of allot my life as it moves forward. So
Mm,
I think that these last 3-4 years has really changed as far as that goes. And but it's a constant thing, reminding myself to detach, reminding myself of, you don't have to be there today, you don't have to. So I'm kind of going through a lot of that right
yeah.
now. I think with the pandemic, it pushed us in. We were going in that direction anyway, and we had no choice but to go back. And now we're kind of okay. The new normal, whatever you call it, is now is kind of here. So now we're going almost back to somewhat of what the plan was beforehand.
Mm, yeah, well said. And I think as well, just kind of touching on the point, something that you brought up earlier, as far as like mental health goes, having things available for your staff and having an openness about issues like that
Mm,
probably helps too. I mean, for anyone and everyone is part of like walking the walk, right? And
yes.
and just like I said, that openness probably would serve anyone within the company and the staff, probably, the executive level as well. So I could see that also potentially, being a benefit too, and probably something that, yourself and maybe everyone is taking advantage of.
Yeah, I sharing, some of my struggles there for sure. I mean, our company grew somewhat quickly, and having how I dealt with that, right? Um, it's experience I never dealt before. You're
Yeah.
constantly, my hands were involved in everything. So there's like the almost like a lineup at the door waiting for you to come in, and that this isn't sustainable, right? Like I
Right.
can't do all of this. So then my
Yeah.
anxiety speak. I had a relationship with that anxiety, and I've kind of opened that door. I definitely talked to the staff about my journey there, and where I am now, and a lot more vulnerable now, and I have no problem sharing any of that stuff, as far
Mm,
as of the world can be tough sometimes, no matter what situation you're in. And I
Yeah.
think that that's it's important not to try to sugarcoat that, or important not to try to, you know, keep that inside. I
Yeah.
think sharing, you communicate or over communicate, and you will always come out ahead there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have one quick follow-up question in regards to this, this discussion we're having right now. I'd be curious about your relationship with your co-founder, Chris and Claire. How does that play into this decoupling of your business and personal life? I understand that you two have a friendship outside of the actual business relationship as well.
Yeah, we're extremely close. I would say we're closer now than we've probably ever been. The business side of it, I think we lucked out there in meeting each other back in the day, and we're very different. And some of what we are is very close. Sorry, very similar, but different in that, we always make the joke that, I'm the turtle and he's the rabbit kind of scenario. And like decision making processes, he'll want to go right away, and I'm the guy that's on the other end of it. I'm just, well, what about this, what about that, and I'm almost too slow, so he's
Slow
kind of
and
got to yank
steady.
me forward. He's got to yank me forward, and I got to yank him
Yeah.
back sometimes. And our roles are very easiest way to explain him is internal and external. Like he does a lot more of what we're doing now than I would do. He's on his feet a lot more. He is dealing with high level customers, really working closely with our top sales team as far as getting new NBD. Whereas I'm more working individually with our leadership team on a regular basis, from sales management to operations management to creative director, etc. So it's worked well that way. From a personal, like, to get to where your question was, really the personal side of it, we continue to grow. It's my first marriage, and that's the best way to explain it. I mean, we've had our arguments, we've had all of those things, but I mean, it's really a lot of love there. And I think that love continues to grow with us. As far as, I mean, I think if you would ask him and some of the similar questions, I think we would say things that we've learned from each other. And I know, speaking of my business partner, the one thing he's really helped me out with is vulnerability and really speaking what's on my mind. And I think you know me well enough to know that there's a good stubbornness there, and being able to open up that door and communicate more effectively. He's kind of been a leader there, and I've leaned on him for that. So, and that's definitely helped make me a better person, no question. So I think we're tighter than ever, and we talk about those things a lot. And with each passing year, I mean, we've known each other for 20 plus years now. So when you look at that, and that we're still together and still going strong in what we want to do, is something to be really proud of, because you don't hear about that all the time.
No, you don't.
And it's only grown that way. And we meet once a week, and we talk somewhat almost daily at this point. But we talk, and when we talk and have our meetings, the two of us, it's, half business, it's half personal, it's life, and kind of bringing all that together. And we kind of go down all those roads together, but really proud of that relationship for sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's really nice to hear. I mean, again, it sounds like it's a reflection of the culture that you have within the company, those issues of transparency and honesty and so on and so forth, really kind of symbolize the relationship that you two have as co-founders. And it seems to have just spread throughout the entire staff. I'm sure people pick
For
up
sure.
on that relationship as well. And that
Yeah,
creates
yeah.
part of the vibe within the office. So yeah.
Oh, for sure. And the ones that know us well also know that we're both pains in the ass, because we're so different. And if they have to talk to us both about certain things, they get two different perspectives. So it's definitely navigating that for them. They've definitely grown doing that for sure.
Yeah. Accelerates their own personal growth.
Yeah, for sure.
All righty. Well, let's shift over into a new segment. And this is called a water cooler story. And basically here, I just let guests indulge listeners with a story related to their profession. So I'd love to hear what you've got, Shaun.
Yeah, I think great. The story that comes to mind the most is recent, and like we call it our kind of pandemic story, because there's just a lot of layers to it. But why when you ask that question, I think about this one first is just because it's top of mind. But really proud. Like, if I look at the last few years, I'm very confident, and it's already something I'm probably one of the most, as far as pride goes. These last 2 years, it's tough to beat that as far as how proud I am of how we've adapted as an organization through everything. And I see that in the individuals. Like, you look at a core group of our team that's been through these last 2 years, how much they've grown together and how much they rally for each other is something I've never seen before. And it's really neat to see it from where Chris and I sit. So I think when you really look at, I guess, 2019 was a banner year for us. We take our staff away for 2 nights, 3 days for our annual general meeting every year. We pick a different location. And we were just coming back from that and celebrating what 29, it was the beginning of 2020. So we're celebrating 2019. And we were like, okay, we have to add more bodies. But at the same time, we were in a 4,000 square foot building. So we were we were a COVID disaster because we had 30 some people and we were ramming them in like sardines. And this is pre-pandemic, but we had already purchased a building. We had already like signed the paperwork. It was going through construction. So we had a lot of delays in that process. Okay. So it kept getting delayed. We couldn't move in, and then we had nowhere to put people. And we were like, we need more people, but we have tons to celebrate. So it was it was a unique situation there. And then all of a sudden, bam, the pandemic hit. So then it was like something we've never dealt with in a big buying season for us. And when we first opened the company in 2007, it was during a recession, and we grew through that recession. But you get with the size we were at this time, you kind of got to go down at that point. You can't, growing through that it's a right. totally different spot. So we laid off a third of the staff. Everyone company-wide pay cut. So we had to make some tough decisions there, just like this, and we've never had to do that before. So that was a whole different thing as well too. And then we were like, I kind of look at it like you go from fat cat to alley cat pretty fast. We were at it. We had a good thing going. We were excited with our growth, and we had our own challenges. Another.
You're on top of the world, more or less, at that point.
Yeah, things were good. I mean, your problems were indigestion, kind of more so than starvation. There, you're like, how do we kind of figure all this out? But it was a great problems to have, but everything just changed on a dime, right? Yeah. So that happens, and then we're navigating. Then like we're okay. We got to figure something out. I mean, we were selling sanitizer. We were in the mask game. You're doing all of the things that your industry's kind of doing. Now we've went a different direction than a lot of what traditional our industry would do. We're a lot more on the creative side of things, as far as more of a creative agency feel really to our company. So we're in that street fight now where we have to sell things we're not really accustomed to doing, and we did it. I mean, we powered through. We did a good job of kind of zigging and zagging the best we possibly could. And then we started to get some momentum, and we started adding bodies back. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, I would say you get into the fall of 2020, things really started to escalate and grow quick. And I dare I say the word pivot. We have this thing at our office where that's been like the buzzword for the last 2 years, talking to customers and suppliers. Right. You're forced to move, right? Yeah. So we did, and it's something we're really proud of. We really went, some stars aligned there. We got into our building during this process when we needed to the most. Mm-hmm. It's kind of explaining, the quick way to explain our industry too is like we would call it a standard order. So say as we're in branded merchandise. So a corporate company would say, we want to reward our staff with, say, jackets, and we want 200 jackets shipped to our location. We'll hand them out, etc. So that really pre-pandemic was 96% of our business we call that standard drop shipment work. We were dabbling in some other things, but we also didn't have the space. We didn't have the right bodies. Mm-hmm. So we pivoted during this because the demand was really there. I mean, we call it, I'm kidding, onboarding. So, the company might say, hey, we want to have kits that we ship across North America or to Europe for any new employee we hire. And we assemble all that here. It might have a letter from the president in it, or a letter from somebody at the organization welcoming to the team. It could also just be a thank you gift or something to help with their sales and new business development. Cool. So that really grew heavily with us, and we put bodies to it. On top of that, we got really big into digital. So we got big into what we call web stores. So they aggressively grew as well too. So anyway, where I'm going with that, plus our global direct is a part of our business where, I mean, we would make something from scratch for customers. It allows us to be more creative. We can actually get right on the ground floor and design what we want for their promotion. So those really things took off. So if you go now 2 years later during a pandemic, what was 96% of our business is 68.
Wow.
And
wow, that's something.
And that 30%-ish range are all of those other services we've added. So, and there's all our growth. Yeah. So there's a lot when something like this happens, never happened before, it's easy in a lot of ways to sit on your hands and say, well, this is our business, right? And I think really looking at the numbers and seeing them now, that's kind of how we had such a banner year this past year. And also something to be really proud of is how we adapted as an organization and kind of went.
Well, I mean, to be frank, like that's what good companies do. That's what good companies do, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you can interpret these challenges one way or another, but the companies that do what you just outlined are the ones that, find ways. They dig in, they strategize, they listen to their customers, they just find out where the market could be going and use their best judgment. And it sounds like you did all of the above. So hats off to you and Brand Boulevard on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to head into our last segment now, something called a crystal ball segment. And basically this, as the name implies, we're looking towards the future here. Oftentimes we look at trends within the industry, so on and so forth. But I like to lead off with this. I've read that one of the ways that Brand Boulevard distinguishes itself from competitors is your company's offbeat strategy of using this advertising agency model approach and working with clients. And you were just kind of alluding to it in the previous segment. But I'd love for you to kind of break that down in terms of what it means for somebody who doesn't know your industry, as intimately. What does that mean, and like how does that compare to, say, most of the companies in your line of work, what they're doing?
Well, it's definitely something we value aggressively, and I think all our industry does really value it. I think where we can look at how we kind of put more eggs in that basket, I really look at just the numbers of staff. Like for our size company, we have 6 full-time designers and a creative director, and there are companies that are quite a bit larger than us that wouldn't have that same volume of staff in sort of their creative services.
Like what would a company be like that doesn't have that? Like how would what's the difference in essence?
I think they're relying, in our industry, you're relying more on the groundwork of your sales staff. So it puts more on them. So that's very common in our industry. It's traditionally a commission-driven environment where you reward your sales individual handsomely, but you're also putting a lot on them. So, I kind of always look at it like showing we need, as far as value, we have to show people what we can do versus telling them. Yeah. And I think that divide continues to grow. And we've had tons of success there, where from an agency approach, we will look at certain companies, certain brands, stuff we want to attack from a new business development standpoint. We will put together a concept deck of stuff that we can do for them, showing them, there's so much you can do in the brand and merchandise agency where it's not just a standard logo on your golf shirt on your left chest. You can pair with a brand, we work with Under Armour, Nike, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Also showing what you can do from what kind of logo you want, patch versus screen print versus et cetera. Also just showing them what you can do with their brand. People like to look at that, they like to see. And if you get that in front of a decision maker from a creatives, and you get a team behind it of creative people to say, here's what we think you can do with your brand.
And why it's good. Yeah.
Why we're pretty confident in that approach. And we've been very fortunate that approach has worked strong for us. And definitely doubling down on that approach is something we're going to continually do because we're reaping the rewards from doing it. But we've also invested heavily in that concept.
And this would be opposed again to, say, just maybe a smaller company or a company that doesn't go for this agency approach. What they'd be doing is maybe just selling out of their catalog or their online shop and say, like, oh, here's some pens, we can brand them up for you. There you go. But not really adding that personal touch and adding the why to it, and why this is essential, why this could be good for you, and really trying to understand the needs of the client. Maybe, am I correct here?
Yeah,
or is that...
you are correct. I think an easier way I can explain that would be, you got to kind of pick where you fit in as well in your battle there. Like a monster in our industry would be a company called 4imprint. They're globally huge, and you just go online and you can, if I want to order 500 mugs with my logo on it, I can go online, I can pick the mug, and I can get those drop shipped to my door in a few weeks or whatever that turnaround would be. I don't need to deal with a salesperson. I can call, I can now, and the growth of where they're putting their money and their energy is getting better there. You can't win that fight.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not something, and it's not something you want to tackle too much. And if you're trying to, it's you have to go a different direction than what you are. So for us, we're more strategic on who we go after, what style of account we go after. So we're very specific in that.
Hmm.
So and we're continuing to grow that as we move forward. So if you're dealing with I could say medium to large size company, and you spend the work on getting to know who's making the decision there as far as purchasing, but also what that company is looking to do with their own branding and their own marketing, and you get and say, here's what we can do for you. Here's how we want to work with you from a value perspective, from a customer service perspective, and mainly and from a creative perspective of what we
Mm.
can show you. And
Yeah.
I think when you go that direction, and we've found a strong niche there, that's kind of the game we like to play, um, as opposed to kind of the Goliath version of saying you can just come to us for. We really work against commodity, I think, is another
Okay.
simple way to play it. And there's a massive, massive market there to do that, and there's a lot of companies that really value that.
That personal touch is, in essence, is
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
yeah.
people are busy, right? People are busy, and if you can find a direct extension of your business and get to know, one of our brand specialists, and they work with you and they provide you with value and ideas constantly, it really makes your job a lot easier.
Yeah.
And we're narrowing in on that relationship and what we can provide, which is completely opposite to the commodity version where you'll jump online and on your own and say, I
Yeah.
want this or I want that.
Right. I gotcha. No, eloquently put. I do have one last follow-up question here, and I spent a bit of time within advertising myself back in the day, and during my time there, I could see this major shift between offline and online, and kind of like the blurring of the lines between the two. But I'd be curious about what you're doing with, again, branded merchandise. Are you experiencing this as well? I mean, are you starting to shift your business a little bit more towards the digital? For example,
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, something as simple as like, I don't know, maybe it's a mouse pad or something that has maybe a QR on it, or it drives people to a website for the client. Is that something that your company is moving towards?
For sure. You see a lot of suppliers we work with, they've really made, a shift towards technology products that kind of supplement that. From a strategic standpoint from us, yeah, I mean, even going into some of those percentages of where we found our rapid growth, I really, when you asked me that, I really thought of the major growth we've had in what we call web stores, which would be just the creation of digital websites that or you know, I almost want to say a digital order forms would be one version of it that we call pop-ups, and then very complex stores where
Yeah.
we will set that up for a company where they will just go online, order this golf shirt and this mug, and we will have it in our warehouse. We'll pull it, pick it, pack it, and ship it to wherever they want us to. So that's really grown as far as making it easier for our customers, is building that site like that. That alone now represents 10 to 12% of our overall business, and that
Oh,
because
wow.
in a 2-year span it grew there. And from a strategic standpoint of how we're working with our customers and new business development, we're always looking at different avenues there, whether even that's just introductions digitally and different ways we can be creative with our brand specialist team. So the shift is definitely there. I mean, that definitely grew the last 2 years, and we've definitely put a lot more resources towards it. And we will continue to do that. I really think when you look at where our industry is from kind of, you mentioned crystal ball, but I really think going from we like to explain it is going from swag to swag management.
Mm.
Like, the traditional way is, yeah, we can get you your swag, we'll deliver it from point A to point B. Now, really, our service offering is swag management. We will not only can we can ship your product to you if you want it, ship it to us, we can store it for you. We can also then inventory it, and we can ship one at a time. We can also create a website that will work and link with your website, so it makes it easy for your staff to go on, order product directly, and they can ship it right to their house. So that I think divide will continue to grow
Mm.
in this new normal, we call it, but we've really jumped heavily into swag management as opposed to just selling swag.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that.
No, no problem.
Yeah. Well, Shaun, I mean, quite conscious of your time, and I thank you for it today. But I think we are drawing to a close, and it's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you for joining us on the show. I'm certain that anyone who's tuning in is just going to gain a ton of insight from this talk. So again, thanks to you for all of that.
uh, Thanks for having me. It was great. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, for those interested in learning more about Shaun and his work, you can read up on him and his company Brand Boulevard at www.brandboulevard.ca. Also, they have a very active Facebook page, a lot of fun. You can really get a feel for the culture there too. So I'd encourage anyone to go check them out there. And if you missed it, this information will be included in the show notes. Also, if you like today's show, please share. Share means the best way of getting it out there. And oftentimes, too, I think the better understanding we have of one another and what we do, it's only going to lead to good things. So I firmly believe in that idea. And also, too, if you feel inclined and you'd like to show support, you can rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And of course, don't forget to join us for the next episode of Life as a, where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details and the professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. And until next time, stay curious about life and living.